All right, if you're keeping up with the spending drama on Capitol Hill, and will we see the government go out of business technically late Friday night or not, we are expecting the House to vote on an interim spending measure to prevent that from happening. It's very, very dicey in the United States Senate, where we're told, and Democrats are already crowing about the reality that the votes simply are not there. And it's not only the number of no votes on their side, but the number of no votes on the Republican side, including this prominent one, Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul. Senator, good to have you.
Thanks, Neal.
So you're a no on this. Why?
Well, I think government spends too much money. Our debt this year, or deficit this year, will be close to $800 billion. Next year is projected to be $1 trillion. So for decades now, you've heard of Congress putting spending caps in place, self-imposed rules to try to get spending under control. Well, this spending bill will exceed those caps. One of the caps were called pay-go caps, and we put them in place a dozen years ago. And I think we've exceeded them, 700 times, 29 times in the last couple of years. So really, we ought, if we say we're fiscally conservative, we ought to be fiscally conservative. So I'm just not voting to exceed the spending caps, and I'm not voting for $700 billion deficits annually.
All right, so whatever the House measure ultimately proves to be, they're working on one, I'm told that would be for a few 5 days. You just don't like the back and forth on it.
Well, it's a terrible way to run your government. They call it continuing resolutions, right. And to me that means continuing an abdication of our duty to actually spend the money department by department. So we have 12 different departments of government. They have appropriation bills. We've done that 4 times in 40 years. It's fiscally irresponsible to glom them all together and say, oh, my hair's on fire. There's a deadline. We have to just vote for it. So examples of waste that I point to, and I'll give you one real quickly. Neal Armstrong, they spent $700,000 trying to determine whether he said one small step for man or one small step for a man. $700,000 spent on that ridiculous idea of research. That stuff goes on year after year after year. It never goes away because no one takes the time to specifically look at the money spent. It's glommed together in trillion-dollar bills, and frankly, I've had enough of it, and I think the American people have had enough with it, and that means that we got to close the place down and restart it under better management. I'm all for that.
Do we know what it was with Neal Armstrong, by the way, for that $700,000? A man.
You know what their conclusion was, Neal? They still don't know. Yeah. Inquiring minds want to know. They still don't know. And you know what makes it even worse? They took the money from autism research. So every person with a child with autism in America ought to be pissed off at their government that they spent it trying to figure out what Neil Armstrong said on the moon. What an insult.
Where do you think this is going? Because Republicans, as you know, being the party that has a run of the table in Washington, they're going to get fingered. You will get fingered for this. What do you think?
I'm concerned about doing what's right, not about which party wins this, because, frankly, this particular time I'll vote with more Democrats. Yesterday, I voted with more Democrats to try to protect American privacy from intelligence agencies snooping in your phone calls. I don't care which party presents it. Frankly, I am who I am. I said who I was. I'm not for debt. I'm not for higher taxes. I'm for smaller government. I'm for more American privacy. And I'm just going to vote whichever way that falls. But it really isn't, for me, a partisan issue.
What do you think of the way the president is trying to handle this and his role in that? That some have said he gave mixed signals, for example, on the child health credit thing, but that should be maybe a separate measure. That he's confusing them. What do you say?
All of these things should be separate measures. There's 12 different departments of government. We should pass them one at a time. There should be a defense appropriation. There should be a childhood health, a CHIPS program appropriation or a Medicaid appropriation. They all should be separate, and we should look at them. We should look at the food stamp program and find out, is it going for food? Is a soft drink food? I mean, there's all kinds of things we should look at in our spending, but it's all glommed together in one bill that no one could possibly conceive of $1 trillion and how we're spending it. It's all in one bill. There will be no reform. It's a terrible, rotten, no good way to run your government, and I want no part of it. And I wish there were more people standing up. And I think there are people at home shaking their heads saying, we spent $700,000 trying to find out what Neil Armstrong said on the moon 35 years ago. That's the kind of craziness that's going on in government. I can give you 20 more examples. How many more minutes do I have?
Yeah. Let me get your take on the dust up, earlier about the president, his doctor, and everything else, and whether the pressure, the job, that people were asking a press conference whether he's, even up to the job and whether he's snapping or he's mentally not up to it. What do you think of that back and forth?
It's I think a low day and a bad day for the media to, kibitz about what the president's weight is. Is he really 6'3" or maybe he's 6'2"? I mean, how ridiculous are people? And the thing is that we could have meaningful debates in our country, and everybody's like criticizing this and that, and it's like we had a debate over the Fourth Amendment from the Bill of Rights. Going all the way back to John Adams and James Otis, we had an important debate, and people were wondering about the president's weight. And did he take a menses test? Did he, is he a genius? All of this ridiculous tabloid trash. And we had a meaningful debate over the Bill of Rights, and very few of America noticed it because you got networks that were so obsessed with his weight and his height.
Your take on where this whole battle is going, because it is blurring the positive elements of the tax cut and companies that seem to be delivering the goods beyond just rewarding their shareholders, Apple the latest. Are you surprised by all of that?
I think there's an amazing story here, and no matter how bad the media is at covering it, a lot of people are going to get increases in their checks. 2 million people now have had an increase in their take-home pay because of the tax cut that Republicans passed. I think it's going to be hard to hide it. I think some in the media who want to help the Democrats, they don't want to talk about the tax cut. 2 million people getting more in their paycheck. People's wages going from a starting wage at Walmart from 9 to 11, many companies going to $15 an hour, hundreds of thousands of workers with bonuses, Apple bringing home $350 billion, talking about 20,000 new jobs with Apple, paying $38 billion in taxes. I mean, there are so many good stories out here, but we are somewhat distracted talking about other things other than policy. But I think you can't, the people who work and look at their pay stub will not be able to escape that they're going to get more money.
Senator Rand Paul, thank you. Very good seeing you again.